Welcome to Audie Ray Stories, from ancient African myths to modern mysteries. So sit back, relax, let's journey together through the magic of storytelling. Don't forget to subscribe. The sky looked bruised, that strange purplish hue that happens when the sun forgets how to rise or set. The kind of sky that doesn't give you light or darkness, just a tired in-between. Maya Reynolds walked beneath it with her suitcase dragging like a dead limb behind her. Every few steps, one of the wheels snagged on the uneven gravel, jerking the handle in her hand. The road ahead stretched out endlessly, cutting through a patchwork of withered fields and sagging fences. It wasn't really a road, more like a scar. A narrow strip of cracked dirt lined with weeds and wildflowers that had long stopped trying. Maya hadn't meant to end up here. But when she packed her bag that morning, when she walked out of the small apartment that still smelled like her ex-boyfriend's cologne, when she threw her phone into the trash can at the bus station, something in her had already made the decision. She was done fighting. The thought repeated in her head like a broken hymn. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. The last 24 hours had been a collage of endings. The kind that don't even ask for permission. Yesterday, her boss had called her into a glass-walled office and delivered a speech wrapped in corporate politeness. Restructuring, he said. It's not you, it's the company. But Maya saw the relief in his eyes. Relief that one more struggling employee could be quietly erased from the budget. Then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife, she came home early and found her boyfriend, the one who swore he wasn't like other guys, in bed with someone else. And this morning, when the phone rang, she already knew. Her mother had been sick for months, fading quietly in a hospice 2 towns away. The nurse's voice had been soft, practiced, the kind of tone used for bad news given too many times. She passed peacefully, dear. She wasn't in pain. Peacefully. Maya wanted to scream. How peaceful could death be when it leaves everyone else in pieces? She had hung up the phone, sat on the edge of her bed, and stared at the wall for so long that the light shifted across it and disappeared. When she finally stood, it wasn't with purpose. It was with surrender. Now, hours later, her bare feet were dusted with dirt. The road stretched toward an old bridge that curved over a dried-up riverbed, the kind of place people forgot existed. The bridge looked skeletal against the horizon. Its wooden planks were gray with age, the rails rusted and splintering. Maya had seen it once before years ago, on a childhood trip when her mother had driven through this part of the countryside. Back then, she'd thought it was beautiful, like something out of an old storybook. Now, it looked like the ending of one. She stopped a few feet from the edge. The suitcase slipped from her fingers and fell onto the ground with a dull thud. The silence pressed in. No cars. No birds. Just the faint hum of cicadas hidden in the tall grass. Her chest felt hollow, like her ribs were empty boxes where hope used to live. She whispered it aloud, to no one in particular. I'm done fighting. The words tasted final. Wind brushed past her hair, lifting it gently, as if the world itself was exhaling. She took one hesitant step toward the bridge. The boards groaned beneath her weight, tired, like everything else. She closed her eyes. And then, the low rumble of an engine cut through the quiet. It started faint, like a memory, then grew louder, the uneven growl of something old and stubborn refusing to die. Maya turned, squinting down the road. Through the dust, a shape emerged, a pickup truck, paint faded, headlights flickering like tired eyes. It moved slowly, the kind of slow that didn't mean hesitation but care. Whoever was driving it wasn't in a hurry, or maybe just knew there was no reason to rush anymore. Maya thought about stepping aside, letting it pass, but some part of her froze. The truck slowed, tires crunching over gravel, until it came to a stop beside her. The window rolled down with a squeal that echoed in the still air. Behind the wheel sat a man who looked carved out of the same land he drove through. Weathered skin, silver-streaked beard, eyes like morning fog. His plaid shirt was faded to the color of old brick, and his hands rested on the steering wheel with the easy stillness of someone who'd spent a lifetime holding heavy things. He studied her for a moment, not the way strangers do, with curiosity or judgment, but the way someone reads weather. Then, in a voice rough but calm, he said, "You look like someone who forgot where they were going." Maya blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. He didn't smile. Didn't frown either. Just waited. She swallowed, her throat dry. "Just walking," she managed. The man nodded slowly. "Funny thing," he said. "People only walk down this road when they're running from something." The sentence hit her harder than it should have. She wanted to deny it, to say she was fine, to pull her suitcase up and keep walking. But her arms felt heavy. Her words, useless. He looked out toward the bridge, then back at her. "That bridge don't lead anywhere," he said simply. "River dried up 10 years ago. You cross it, all you'll find is dust." Maya's eyes burned. She turned away, staring at the horizon that seemed to swallow itself. "Maybe that's the point," she whispered. The man was silent for a while. She could hear the faint ticking of the truck's engine cooling in the air. Then, softly, he said, "Maybe. But dust has a way of remembering what it used to be." The sentence lingered, strange, poetic, unsettlingly gentle. Maya looked at him then, really looked. There was something about the man that didn't belong to this century. Maybe it was the way he spoke, slow, deliberate, as if every word had to earn its right to exist. Or maybe it was his eyes, pale, steady, unafraid of sadness. She crossed her arms. "Do you always stop for strangers?" "Only when they look like they forgot they're still alive." Her breath caught. The wind shifted again, rustling the grass. The bridge behind her creaked as if protesting her delay. He reached for something on the passenger seat, a thermos, and held it out the window. "Coffee." She hesitated. The steam curled from the lid, carrying the faint scent of earth and something sweet, maybe cinnamon. It had been almost 2 days since she'd eaten anything more than gas station crackers. She took the thermos carefully. It was warm in her hands. "Thank you," she murmured. "No rush," he said. "Drink it slow. It's strong enough to make you remember your name." She almost laughed. Almost. But the sound that came out was more like a sigh. She took a sip. It was bitter, scalding, perfect. The man watched her for a moment, then nodded toward the passenger door. "You headed somewhere?" She shook her head. "Good," he said. "Means you can change your mind." Maya frowned. "About what?" "Whatever you came here to end." The words hit the air like a match striking stone. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of all the things she didn't want to admit. Finally, he started the truck again. The engine coughed, then settled into a steady hum. "Well," he said, "I'm heading home to feed the chickens. Could use an extra pair of hands." Maya blinked, startled by the sudden shift. "I don't even like chickens." He smiled, a small, tired smile, but real. "Good. They'll like you better that way." Before she could respond, he tipped his hat, shifted gears, and let the truck idle forward a few feet, waiting. The unspoken invitation hung in the air between them. "Good. They'll like you better that way." Before she could respond, he tipped his hat, shifted gears, and let the truck idle forward a few feet, waiting. The unspoken invitation hung in the air between them. Maya looked back at the bridge. The wood gleamed faintly under the dying light, each board a reminder of where she had almost gone. Then she looked at the truck, at the man whose eyes seemed to carry a kind of quiet understanding she hadn't felt in years. The coffee was still warm in her hands. Maybe, she thought, she could ride for just a few minutes. Maybe she could pretend she wasn't broken yet. She took one step toward the truck, then another. The gravel shifted beneath her feet, whispering softly as if approving. When she climbed into the passenger seat, the leather creaked. The air inside smelled like hay and gasoline and something safe. The man glanced at her, gave a short nod, and pressed the accelerator. The bridge, the riverbed, the old life, all of it fell away behind them. As the truck rumbled down the road, the sun finally broke through the clouds, streaking the fields in gold. Maya didn't know where they were going, but for the first time in months, she didn't care. She looked out the window, at the world beginning to glow again, and thought, maybe the road isn't ending. Maybe it's just turning. The truck rattled down the dirt road like an old heartbeat, uneven, steady, impossible to ignore. Dust rose behind them in a long golden plume, curling upward into the fading light. The fields on either side stretched wide and unbroken, stitched with rows of corn that swayed like tired soldiers waiting for rain. Maya sat stiff in the passenger seat, fingers wrapped around the thermos. The coffee had cooled, but she couldn't stop holding it. Its faint warmth was the only proof she hadn't imagined all this. The man at the wheel, Tom, she'd later learn, drove with one hand resting loosely on the steering wheel, the other tapping now and then against the door in rhythm with the engine. His movements were slow but sure, like someone who knew both the land and his own limits. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The hum of the tires, the wind slipping through the cracked window, the creak of the seat, it all made a kind of gentle, wordless music. Finally, Maya broke the silence. "Do you always pick up strangers on back roads?" she asked, her voice quieter than she meant. He shrugged. "Only the ones who look like they need picking up." "That's vague," she said. He grinned faintly. "So's life." His voice had that weathered tone people get when they've said a lot of words that mattered and learned most folks don't listen anyway. She studied him from the corner of her eye. He wasn't what she expected, not creepy or overly kind, just present. His beard was thick, streaked silver and white. His skin looked like it had been tanned by 1,000 summers. And his eyes, gray-blue, sharp as a winter morning, carried the quiet weight of someone who had seen too much to be surprised anymore. "So what's your name?" he asked, eyes still on the road. "Maya." He nodded once. "Good name. Short. Sturdy." She smirked faintly. "What's yours?" "Tom Whitaker," he said. "Farmer. Chicken enthusiast. Amateur philosopher when the mood hits." "Amateur philosopher?" He chuckled. "Mostly just means I talk to cows when no one's around." Maya almost smiled. Almost. The truck jolted as it hit a pothole. She gripped the handle above the window. "Careful," she said. "Road's got character," he replied. "Keeps a man awake." The sky outside had turned deeper now, a velvety blue that made the horizon glow like embers. Fireflies blinked in the tall grass as they passed, tiny lanterns in the twilight. She felt herself breathing again, not steady, but enough. After a few minutes, she asked, "Where exactly are we going?" "Home," he said simply. "Whitaker Farm. About 3 miles that way." He nodded toward the open fields. "Got chores to finish before dark." "Chores? Animals don't care about moods," he said. "They just care you show up." That line lingered with her longer than it should have. He drove in silence again, then said softly, "So, what were you doing out there on that bridge?" Her pulse stuttered. "Just walking," she said again, the words automatic. Tom glanced at her. Not prying, just measuring. Long walk for someone carrying that kind of suitcase. "It's all I have left," she said. He nodded, eyes back on the road. "Then it's enough." Something in his tone, matter of fact, almost gentle, made her throat tighten. The truck slowed as they turned down another narrow lane, the gravel shifting under the tires. A hand-painted wooden sign leaned crooked by the fence. "Whitaker Farm. No trespassing, unless you bring pie." She huffed a small laugh. "Serious about desserts, huh?" He grinned. "You'd be surprised how many problems can be fixed with pie." The headlights cut across a row of low barns, their roofs bowed with age, the paint long faded to memory. A windmill turned lazily in the distance, its creak rhythmic and mournful. The house came into view next, 2 stories, pale and chipped, surrounded by a porch that wrapped around like an embrace. Tom parked beside a rusted tractor and killed the engine. The silence that followed was heavy but calm, the kind of quiet you don't realize you've missed until you hear it again. He opened his door and stepped out, stretching until his joints cracked. You coming? Maya hesitated, looking around. The air smelled of hay, rain-soaked dirt, and something faintly sweet. Honeysuckle, maybe. I don't want to intrude, she said. He waved a hand. Intruding's just visiting without warning. You've got a reason. That's better than most. Before she could argue, he headed toward the barn. She followed, the gravel crunching beneath her bare feet. Inside, the barn was dim but warm, lit by a single hanging bulb that buzzed faintly. The scent of straw and feed filled the air. Dozens of chickens clucked softly from wooden coops, their feathers gleaming like copper in the light. Tom picked up a tin bucket and handed her one. Welcome to poultry therapy, he said. Start with the nests near the back. She blinked. You want me to, what, collect eggs? He nodded. Unless you're allergic to purpose. She frowned, but he was already moving down the row, humming an off-key tune that might have been a hymn or a country song, hard to tell. Maya hesitated, then crouched near a coop. A hen blinked at her, unimpressed. Hi, she muttered. Don't peck me. The hen tilted its head, decided she wasn't worth the effort, and turned away. She reached under gently and pulled out an egg. Warm, smooth, heavier than she expected. For some reason, the simple act made her chest ache. She placed it carefully in the bucket and moved to the next nest. Tom's voice carried over the rustling of feathers. Lost my wife in this barn once. Maya froze mid-motion. I'm sorry. He chuckled softly. Not like that. She used to come help gather eggs, back before. He trailed off, then continued quieter. Back before she passed. Oh. She loved the chickens, he said. Said they reminded her of people. Noisy, messy, but good-hearted when fed right. Maya smiled faintly. How long ago? 20 years come September. He paused, looking down at a cracked wooden beam as if it held the answer to something. She went quick. Heart attack, right before harvest. The air seemed to still around them. 20 years come September. He paused, looking down at a cracked wooden beam as if it held the answer to something. She went quick. Heart attack, right before harvest. The air seemed to still around them. I'm sorry, Maya said. He nodded once. I was too. For a long while. They worked in silence for a few minutes, the rhythm strangely soothing. Lift, check, place. The eggs clinked softly in the metal bucket like fragile prayers. Finally, Tom spoke again. You know what I figured out? What? That the soil doesn't quit, he said. It just waits for you to plant again. Maya looked up. He was standing by the door now, hands resting on his bucket, the warm light tracing the lines of his face. You talk like the world's a person, she said. He smiled. Maybe it is. Just old, patient, and tired of our complaining. She thought about that, about how the earth kept turning, crops kept growing, even when no one was watching. When they finished, Tom carried both buckets to a wooden table and began sorting the eggs with practiced care. You hungry? He asked. I haven't really eaten since. She stopped. Since before everything fell apart. He handed her a small loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. From this morning. Still soft. Maya tore off a piece. The taste was simple, salty, perfect. She hadn't realized how hollow her stomach was until then. Tom poured water into 2 chipped glasses. Sit, he said. You look like you've been standing for years. She sat on an overturned crate. He joined her, wiping his hands on his jeans. For a moment, they just sat there. 2 strangers sharing quiet under a humming light. Then Tom said, almost to himself, funny thing about running. You can't outrun the ground. Eventually, you've got to stop and let it catch you. Maya looked at him. Is that what you did? He nodded. Eventually. And it got better? He took a sip of water, considering. Not better. Different. Sometimes that's enough. Outside, The wind shifted. The old windmill groaned again, turning slowly against the twilight. Tom stood and stretched. You can stay the night in the guest room. Won't be fancy, but it's got a bed that don't argue. I should go, she said automatically. He raised an eyebrow. Where to? The question landed like a stone. She didn't have an answer. He smiled, not kindly, but knowingly. Then stay. One night won't change the world. But it might change the morning. Maya hesitated, then nodded. One night, she said quietly. Fair enough. As they walked back toward the house, fireflies danced in the dark fields, tiny sparks floating between the stalks. The porch light glowed ahead like a beacon. For the first time since her mother's death, since the job, since the betrayal, Maya felt the faintest pull of something unfamiliar. Not joy. Not even peace. Just the beginning of belonging. And behind her, the road stretched empty under the moon, the bridge now nothing more than a shadow. Morning came slowly, like a soft confession. Maya woke to the smell of something she hadn't felt in months. Warmth. Not the physical kind, but the kind that lingers in the air when life hasn't given up on you yet. Sunlight spilled through thin curtains, painting the walls with long stripes of gold. The small guest room looked like a snapshot from another time. Lace curtains, a wooden dresser with chipped paint, and a quilt that smelled faintly of lavender. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Her eyes darted around the unfamiliar space, heartbeat quick, ready to run. Then the memories came back. The bridge, the truck, the old man, the chickens. Tom. Maya exhaled slowly, sinking back against the pillow. She hadn't meant to fall asleep. After everything that had happened, she didn't think she could sleep. Yet she had, deeply, dreamlessly. The kind of sleep that feels like forgiveness. Somewhere outside, a rooster crowed, sounding both heroic and absurd. She groaned softly, pulling the blanket over her face. Seriously. A voice called from beyond the door, warm and amused. That rooster's punctual. I could learn a thing or two from him. Tom. She sat up, startled. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Sleep, he interrupted. That's half the reason God made beds. Breakfasts on the porch when you're ready. His footsteps faded, leaving only the rhythmic creak of the floorboards. Maya sat for a while, staring at her suitcase in the corner. She'd packed it with everything she thought she needed. Her mother's photo, a few changes of clothes, the resignation letter she never turned in, a bottle of sleeping pills she didn't want to think about. Now, under the quiet light of morning, it looked ridiculous. A sad little box of endings. She splashed cold water on her face from the porcelain sink, brushed her hair into something resembling order, and stepped outside. The porch stretched wide and welcoming, wrapped around the house like an old armchair. A small table sat near the railing, set with 2 mugs of coffee, a plate of biscuits, and a jar of honey that gleamed like amber. Tom was there, leaning back in a rocking chair that creaked with every slow movement. He had a newspaper folded on his lap and a pair of glasses perched on his nose, though he didn't seem to be reading. He glanced up as she appeared. Morning, city girl. Morning, chicken man, she said before thinking. He laughed. A real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep. You slept. Like the dead. Not the phrase I'd use, but I'll take it. She poured herself some coffee. It was strong enough to peel paint, but she didn't mind. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the fields come alive. Cows lumbered toward the fence, chickens strutted like royalty, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked half-heartedly. After a few minutes, Tom said, So, you got plans today? Maya stared into her mug. No. He nodded thoughtfully. Good. I was hoping you'd say that. She frowned. Why? He reached into his shirt pocket, pulled out a folded list, and handed it to her. The handwriting was looping and uneven, the ink faded. TODO list. 1. Feed the chickens. 2. Patch the fence. 3. Fix the pump. 4. Remember to breathe. She looked up, one eyebrow raised. Number 4 seems optional. Most folks forget it's the most important one, he said, grinning. Maya chuckled despite herself. You really think I can fix a pump? He shrugged. Don't know. But I think you could use the satisfaction of trying. She set the coffee down. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Being kind. He leaned back, the chair creaking softly. Because someone was kind to me once, when I didn't deserve it. Maya stared out at the fields. The sun was climbing higher, the light catching on the golden wheat like waves of fire. You don't even know me, she said quietly. Tom took a sip of coffee. You don't need to know someone to care if they make it through the day. That silence again, not awkward, but full. After breakfast, he led her out to the barn. The air smelled of hay and dust, and the morning light streamed through the gaps in the wooden boards. Grab that toolbox, he said, nodding toward a shelf. Pump's been leaking near the well. She followed him through the tall grass until they reached a weathered water pump leaning at an odd angle, like it had seen better days and fewer storms. Tom crouched beside it, motioning for her to do the same. See that valve there? It's loose. She squinted. Looks like it's rusted. Everything's rusted, he said. Doesn't mean it's broken. He handed her a wrench. Give it a try. Maya took it hesitantly, fitting it around the bolt. Her hands trembled slightly, unused to labor that wasn't behind a computer. Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, he murmured. I know, she said with mock irritation. Good. Just checking. She turned the wrench slowly, the metal squealing in protest. Her palms burned. Sweat dotted her forehead. After a minute, she got it. The bolt shifted, tightening into place. Tom grinned. See, you're officially a plumber. She exhaled, surprised by the small burst of pride in her chest. I did it. Yep, he said. You fixed something that wasn't yours to fix. That's rare these days. His tone was casual, but the words stuck. They spent the rest of the morning mending fences and feeding animals. The rhythm of it was strange but grounding, physical, simple, immediate. The world felt tangible again, not just something collapsing in her hands. At noon, they sat under an oak tree, eating sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. Tom wiped his hands on a rag and said, You know, most people spend their whole lives trying to find meaning. Then when it finally shows up, they call it inconvenience. Maya laughed softly. You always talk like a fortune cookie. Only the good ones, he said, deadpan. She took a long sip of water, watching the sunlight flicker through the leaves. I used to think meaning came from success, she said. From work, or relationships, or, I don't know, winning. How's that working out? She smirked. Terribly. He chuckled. That's because you were chasing something that runs faster than people do. Then what do you chase? He thought for a moment. Peace of mind. And a good harvest. Both about equally stubborn. Something in her chest loosened. When they finished eating, he leaned back against the tree and closed his eyes. You remind me of my wife, he said suddenly. Maya blinked. How's that? She never knew how to quit either, he said. Even when quitting made sense. I wasn't exactly trying to not quit, she murmured. I know. The breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and earth. A bird called somewhere high above. He opened one eye and looked at her. You got somewhere to go after this? She hesitated. No. Then don't, he said. What? Don't go, he said simply. Stay a while. The work's honest, the food's edible, and the sky's got room enough for all your regrets. Maya frowned. You're just offering a job to a random stranger? Not a job, he said. An invitation. She stared at him. Why? Tom's eyes softened. Because you were about to walk off a bridge yesterday. And I figure if the world tried that hard to keep you here, the least I can do is give you something worth staying for. The words hung between them like sunlight through glass. Fragile, perfect, almost unbearable. Maya looked away, blinking fast. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know anything about farms, or life out here, or... Good, he interrupted. Means you'll learn something. I don't belong here. He smiled gently. You don't belong anywhere yet. That's the beauty of starting over. The wind stirred again, lifting strands of her hair. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled faintly, like a reminder that life still had storms. She looked at her hands. Dirty, blistered, real. For the first time in years, they looked like they'd done something that mattered. Finally, she whispered, "Okay, I'll stay. For a little while." Tom nodded, satisfied. A little while's plenty of time for the right seeds to take root. He stood, dusting off his jeans, and started toward the barn. Come on. Sun's setting soon. Chickens need rounding up. Maya followed, her steps lighter, her breath easier. As they walked back, the sky turned orange and rose, painting the horizon in colors she didn't have names for. For a fleeting moment, she felt something unfamiliar, not hope exactly, but its distant cousin. She glanced at Tom, at the quiet strength in the way he moved, at the steadiness that had no performance in it. "Hey, Tom," she called softly. "Yeah. Thanks for stopping yesterday." He looked over his shoulder, smiling faintly. "Didn't stop," he said. "Just saw someone worth turning around for." And for the first time, Maya didn't feel like running. By the third morning, the farm no longer felt like a stranger. Maya woke before sunrise, not because she wanted to, but because the world outside insisted. The rooster crowed like clockwork, the windmill groaned to life, and the smell of dew-soaked grass drifted through the cracked window. For a long time, she just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. They were blistered, raw in places, but alive, proof she'd done something with them other than hold her phone or wipe tears. When she stepped outside, the world was painted in quiet gold. Mist clung to the ground, swirling between the rows of corn and wildflowers. The farmhouse stood behind her like a weary guardian, and beyond it, the barns waited, their wood soaked in the memory of years. Tom was already up, of course. He was always up. He stood near the chicken coop, leaning on a pitchfork, a mug of coffee steaming beside him. "Morning," she called. He tipped his hat. "Morning, city girl. I'm starting to think you don't sleep." "Farmers don't sleep," he said. "We just blink slower." She smiled, an honest one this time. Tom handed her a basket. "Eggs first. Then stories." "Stories?" she asked, eyebrow raised. He grinned. "You do the work, you get the stories. That's the deal." She accepted the basket, shaking her head. "That's the weirdest payment system I've ever heard." "Better than money," he said. "Stories last longer." The chickens were already awake, scratching at the dirt, gossiping in low clucks. Maya crouched beside a nest, carefully reaching under a hen. The bird gave her a disapproving glare but didn't move. "Still judging me," she muttered. "Same as everyone else." Tom's voice floated from behind her. "They judge everybody. It's just how they say good morning." She laughed quietly and continued collecting. The eggs were warm, smooth, fragile, tiny miracles in a world that hadn't been kind. When she stood, Tom was watching her. "You're gentler than you think," he said. "Gentle doesn't usually get you far," she replied. "Depends on where you're going." They carried the baskets back to the porch. Tom poured her a second cup of coffee and sat down on the steps. "You've earned your story." She sat beside him. "Let's hear it." He stared out at the fields for a long moment before speaking. "Lost my wife 20 years ago," he said. "The night before harvest. Her name was Clara." Maya listened, silent. "She was the reason this place ever made sense," he continued. Could turn a broken fence into a swing, a storm into a song. We used to dance in the kitchen when the power went out. Said it made the dark feel smaller. He chuckled softly. I didn't know how to live without her. For a long time, I didn't. What did you do? He ran a thumb along the rim of his mug. Stopped eating. Stopped talking. Thought about walking out to that same bridge you were on. Maya's heart tightened. You? He nodded. Yeah. Guess grief don't care how tough you are. What stopped you? He looked at the horizon, where the sun had begun to rise. Slow, deliberate, certain. The soil, he said simply. I'd already planted that year. Couldn't leave the ground half done. So I told myself I'd stay until the crop came in. He smiled faintly. And when harvest came, I realized the field had done what I couldn't, kept growing. Maya looked at him, unsure what to say. He met her eyes. The soil doesn't quit. It just waits for you to plant again. Something inside her cracked open, not like breaking, more like thawing. She felt the sting behind her eyes, that dangerous warmth that always came before tears. Tom didn't move to comfort her. He didn't need to. The silence between them did the work. She whispered, I don't think I have anything left to plant. Sure you do, he said softly. You just forgot where to dig. The words hit deeper than she expected. She turned away, blinking hard, pretending to focus on the fields. The day rolled on. By noon, they were fixing a section of fence near the pasture. The boards were old, splintered, sagging under the weight of years. Tom hammered with easy rhythm, every swing precise. Maya followed his lead, holding the boards steady. So how long do you plan on staying? He asked. I don't know, she said. I didn't plan on being here at all. He smiled. Life's funny that way. The best things happen when you stop planning. Or when everything falls apart, she said. Same thing sometimes. The air grew warm. Bees drifted lazily among the clover. The sound of the hammer echoed across the open fields, steady as a heartbeat. After a while she asked, Do you ever get lonely out here? He paused, wiping sweat from his brow. Sometimes. But loneliness isn't always a curse. It's a space, and what you fill it with makes all the difference. What did you fill it with? He smiled. Chickens. Coffee. Strangers. She rolled her eyes. You're impossible. He laughed. Maybe. But impossible's better than gone. They worked until the sun began to sink, spilling color across the sky like paint bleeding through paper. The fence stood firm again, straight and proud. Maya looked at their work and felt a flicker of something strange. Pride, maybe. She hadn't felt it in years. Tom stood beside her, hands on his hips. See that? He said. Didn't fall down. Didn't even complain. You'd fit right in. She smirked. With the fence. With the farm, he said. The words lingered. That evening, they ate dinner on the porch, stew that tasted of tomatoes and smoke, bread fresh from the oven. The crickets sang, the fields whispered in the wind, and the stars began to appear one by one like quiet applause. Maya leaned back, full and tired in a good way. I forgot what tired felt like, she said. Tom raised an eyebrow. You been tired. You just forgot what earned tired feels like. She laughed. Fair. After a long pause, she asked, Do you ever think about leaving? He shook his head. No need. The world's loud enough without me chasing it. What if you get stuck? He smiled. Sometimes stuck is just another word for rooted. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the scent of rain from far away. She closed her eyes, breathing it in. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like running. She didn't feel like disappearing. She just felt present. Tom watched her for a moment, then said quietly, You know, most people spend their lives trying to outrun pain. But pain's just proof you still care. She nodded slowly. It hurts less here. He smiled. That's because you're not holding it alone. A long silence followed. The kind that didn't need breaking. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I miss my mom. I know. She used to tell me everything grows back if you give it love. Even people. She sounds smart. She was. I just stopped listening. Tom leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the stars. Maybe she sent you here to start listening again. Maya swallowed hard, her throat tight. You think that's how it works? I think the world's full of rerouted roads, he said. You miss one turn, it builds another. The sky deepened to indigo. Fireflies blinked among the grass, mirrors of the stars above. Maya rested her head against the porch post. I never thanked you, she murmured. For what? For stopping that day. He took a sip of coffee. Didn't stop. Just saw someone worth turning around for. She smiled faintly. You already said that. I meant it twice. A soft thunder rolled in the distance. Tom stood, stretching. Storm's coming. Good for the crops, bad for my joints. She watched him disappear inside, returning with a blanket. Without a word, he draped it over her shoulders before taking his seat again. You can stay here as long as you need, he said quietly. No rent, no rules. Just work and rest. She nodded, unable to speak. They sat there together, the farmer and the broken woman, watching the first drops of rain darken the porch. The world smelled like renewal, soil, sky, and something unnamed. Maya looked out across the fields, where lightning flickered faintly in the clouds. For the first time since her mother died, since her life collapsed, she felt the smallest seed of something begin to stir inside her. Fragile, hesitant, alive. Hope didn't come back all at once. It came like the rain, soft at first, then steady. And as the thunder rolled closer, she whispered into the night. Maybe the soil doesn't quit after all. Tom smiled without looking at her. Told you. It just waits for you to plant again. The storm came heavy that night. Rain hammered the tin roof like 1,000 small apologies, and thunder rolled slow and deep over the hills. The old farmhouse creaked and sighed with every gust of wind, but it stood, the way things built on purpose always do. Maya lay awake for a long time, watching shadows ripple across the ceiling. The room smelled of wet wood and soap. Somewhere down the hall, Tom's radio played faintly, an old country song about losing and finding again. The kind of song that sounded like truth wrapped in twang. She couldn't sleep. Her chest felt full in a way that wasn't panic anymore, just weight. The kind of weight that meant something was shifting, quietly, beneath the surface. When dawn finally arrived, it came shyly, gray light leaking through the clouds like an afterthought. She pulled on her boots and stepped outside. The world looked washed clean. Puddles mirrored the sky, and the air hummed with that strange, sacred calm that only follows a storm. Tom was already on the porch, of course. He always was. He sat with his coffee, hat tilted low, watching the mist lift off the fields. Maya joined him without a word. For a while, they just sat. Two quiet figures in a world that felt reborn. Finally, she said, "It's beautiful." He nodded. Storms usually leave something worth keeping. She smiled faintly. You really can turn anything into a proverb. Old habit. Helps me remember. Remember what? He looked at the horizon. That everything that breaks can feed something new. She followed his gaze. The wheat shimmered under the rising sun, every drop of rain catching the light like glass. It had been a week since she arrived. A week of early mornings, aching muscles, and quiet evenings that bled into peace. She'd learned to collect eggs without flinching, to mend fences without splinters, and to breathe without counting the reasons not to. It had been a week since she arrived. A week of early mornings, aching muscles, and quiet evenings that bled into peace. She'd learned to collect eggs without flinching, to mend fences without splinters, and to breathe without counting the reasons not to. But today felt different. There was a tightness in the air, not fear, exactly, but anticipation. The kind of quiet before a truth decides to step forward. Tom must have felt it too, because after a few minutes he said, "You've been carrying something heavy since the day I found you." Maya's throat tightened. "You don't miss much, do you?" "Not when it's that loud," he said softly. She stared into her coffee, the steam ghosting upward. "I wasn't just walking that day." He said nothing. Just waited, the way the earth waits for rain. Her fingers trembled slightly around the mug. "I was going to end it," she said. "On that bridge." The words hung there, bare and trembling. Tom didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't rush to fill the silence. He just nodded, slow and deliberate, like he'd known all along. "I figured," he said. The honesty startled her. "You did." He looked out at the fields. "You had that look, the kind people get when they've already said goodbye to themselves." Maya's breath hitched. "Why didn't you say something? Would you have listened?" She shook her head, a single tear slipping down her cheek. "Probably not." He leaned back, eyes still on the horizon. "Then there wasn't much to say. Sometimes words just scare people back into silence." She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "You really thought I'd go through with it?" "I thought you already had," he said. "Just not the kind that leaves a body." The line hit her like thunder. Quiet, inevitable, true. She stared at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "How did you know?" "Because I've been there," he said simply. The wind stirred the wheat. Somewhere, a crow called. "When Clara died," he continued, "I stopped talking to the world. Figured if I couldn't follow her, I could at least stop showing up. That's a slow kind of dying most folks don't notice." He turned toward her, his gaze steady. "But one morning I walked out here, same spot you're sitting, and saw a single green shoot pushing through the dirt. Just one. Tiny thing, barely alive. But it was enough to make me think, if the ground can grow again after winter, maybe I can too." Maya's chest ached. The words sank deep, heavy with quiet grace. "If the ground can grow again after winter," she repeated softly. "So can you," Tom finished. For a long while, they didn't speak. The only sounds were the wind, the distant hum of bees, the low creak of the rocking chair. It wasn't comfort she felt. Not exactly. It was recognition. Like she'd been holding her breath for months and had finally remembered how to exhale. She closed her eyes, the tears falling freely now. "I don't know if I deserve to." "To what?" "To grow again." Tom's voice softened. "Deserving's got nothing to do with it. The soil doesn't ask who buried it. It just waits." Maya laughed through her tears, a small, broken sound. "You make it sound so simple." He smiled. "It is simple. It's just not easy." They sat in silence again, letting the morning settle around them. Eventually, Tom stood, stretching with a wince. "Well," he said, "we can't just sit here feeling feelings all day. The goats are plotting a mutiny." Maya laughed, a real, full laugh that startled even her. "I'll get the feed." He nodded approvingly. "That's the spirit." The rest of the morning unfolded quietly. The routine had become a kind of prayer, small ordinary acts that tethered her to the world. Feeding, cleaning, fixing. She found peace in repetition, in the way the chores didn't ask for her history, just her hands. By afternoon, the sun had burned through the clouds, leaving everything golden and alive. Maya was near the barn, stacking hay, when she heard Tom's voice from the porch. "Break time," he called. She wiped the sweat from her brow and joined him. 2 glasses of lemonade waited on the railing, beads of condensation sliding down their sides. She took one, sighing. "You're going to spoil me." "Too late," he said. They drank in silence, watching the horizon. After a while Maya said, "Do you ever wish you'd done things differently?" Tom thought for a moment. "Sometimes. But regret's just memory trying to change the past. Doesn't work that way. I still think about the life I lost, she said. The job, my mom, everything. I keep wondering who I'd be if none of it happened. He nodded. You'd be someone else. But maybe not someone better. She looked at him sharply. You really believe that? He smiled faintly. I believe pain has a better memory than comfort. It makes you pay attention. Maya turned the glass in her hands. It still hurts. It's supposed to, he said. That's how you know you're healing. They stayed there until the sun began to fall, the sky turning from gold to rose to the deep blue of coming night. The cicadas started their evening chorus, filling the air with a familiar hum. Maya leaned against the railing, staring out at the darkening fields. Tom, she said quietly. Yeah. What if it all falls apart again? He didn't hesitate. Then you build again. That's what living is. Building again and again until it finally feels like home. She nodded slowly. The first stars appeared. The windmill turned lazily, its blades whispering secrets to the night. Maya looked over at him. The porch light caught the edges of his silver beard, the lines carved deep around his eyes. He looked peaceful, not untouched by grief, but anchored by it. I don't know what I'm supposed to do next, she admitted. Tom smiled gently. You don't need to. Just keep showing up. The rest will grow when it's ready. Her throat tightened again, but this time, she didn't look away. Thank you, she said. He nodded once. You already thanked me. I mean it. I know. The sky deepened. The air cooled. Somewhere far off, an owl called into the dark. Maya took a slow breath, feeling the air fill her lungs. Heavy, sweet, alive. For the first time since her mother's death, she didn't feel like a ghost walking through someone else's life. She felt real. Present. Rooted. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I think I want to live. Tom smiled, a small, proud curve of the mouth. Good. The farm's a terrible place for ghosts. She laughed softly, tears slipping down her cheeks again, but this time, they didn't hurt. As the night wrapped around them, fireflies rose from the grass like sparks from an unseen fire. Maya closed her eyes, hearing the soft creak of Tom's chair beside her, the heartbeat rhythm of the world still turning. And when she opened them again, the stars seemed closer, like they'd leaned in to listen. The windmill still creaked, but now it sounded like an old friend clearing its throat before speaking. Morning sunlight spilled across the fields, turning the wheat into rivers of gold. The air smelled of wild mint and rain-soaked soil. Birds stitched lines of song through the quiet. It was a new day, and, for Maya Reynolds, the kind that didn't need to prove anything. She stood on the porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the horizon glow. The cup was chipped, the handle mended with glue, Tom's cup. She still used it every morning. The farm didn't feel borrowed anymore. It breathed with her. A year had passed since that day on the bridge, a whole year since she'd walked barefoot through the dust, ready to disappear. Sometimes she still dreamed of it, the sky bruised purple, the riverbed dry, the sound of the truck slowing beside her. Only now, in the dream, she didn't step toward the edge. She stepped into the light of the headlights and heard Tom's voice, gentle as dawn. You look like someone who forgot where they were going. The memory always left her smiling. Life on the farm had unfolded in slow miracles. Days shaped themselves around rhythm and care. Feeding, planting, mending, harvesting. The kind of work that taught her the world didn't owe her healing, but it would give her a place to find it. In spring, the chickens hatched new chicks, tiny clouds of yellow wobbling through the grass. In summer, the crops reached higher than her shoulders. In autumn, the fields blazed copper and red, and she'd watch the sunset from the porch until the stars took over. Tom had been there for all of it, until he wasn't. He'd passed peacefully that spring, just before the first planting. Heart failure, the doctor said. Quick. Quiet. Maya found him on the porch one morning, hat tilted low, coffee still warm beside him. It was a stillness that didn't frighten her, not at first. He looked the way he always did when the sun rose, steady, certain. It wasn't until she noticed his chest no longer rising that the world broke open again. The funeral was small. Just a handful of locals, old friends, farmhands, neighbors who'd traded stories and pie with him over the years. The preacher said words that sounded like they belonged to someone else's grief, but Maya didn't mind. She didn't need the words. After everyone left, she sat by the fresh mound of earth and whispered, "You were right. The ground waits for you." And somehow, saying it felt like planting something. In the weeks that followed, she kept the farm running because that's what he would have done. Grief didn't pause the animals or the soil. It just added weight to the work, but it also gave it meaning. One evening, as she went through his old desk, she found the deed. His name at the top, neat and firm. But beneath it, in careful handwriting, was a single line added later. "In the event of my passing, the property shall belong to Maya Reynolds." Her breath caught. Below that, a note in his handwriting. "The soil remembers kindness. Keep planting." She cried then, the kind of cry that comes from somewhere too deep to name. That was 6 months ago. Since then, she'd rebuilt, replanted, renamed. The sign by the road was her idea. She'd painted it herself, the letters uneven but proud. The Second Chance Farm. Open to anyone who forgot where they were going. It stood just beyond the curve, right where the bridge came into view. The first time she drove past it after hanging it up, she had to pull over. Tears blurring the world, laughter tangled with them. Now, travelers came sometimes. Strangers, like she once was. People who looked tired in their bones. People who had run out of road and reasons. They'd stop by asking for water, directions, sometimes work. And every time, Maya would see that look, the one she'd worn herself, and she'd say, "You look like someone who forgot where they were going." And they'd pause. Every one of them. Some stayed an hour. Some stayed a day. Some stayed for good. The farm had become more than land. It was a way station for the lost. There was a mechanic from Detroit who couldn't stand the city noise anymore. A woman from New Mexico who'd left behind a marriage that bruised more than it loved. A young man who'd driven until his car gave out and decided he was home. They worked together, laughed together, shared meals at the long wooden table Tom built decades ago. Every night, they'd tell stories. The good ones, the hard ones, the kind that scraped and healed at the same time. Sometimes, when the wind blew just right, Maya could almost hear Tom's chuckle in the rafters. "Stories last longer," he used to say. And he was right. Today, as she sipped her coffee and watched the sunrise, she thought of him again. Thought of how he'd taught her that healing wasn't about fixing what broke. It was about learning to live where the cracks let the light in. Her hair was longer now. Her hands, stronger. There were lines at the corners of her eyes, but they didn't come from sadness anymore. They came from sun and laughter and life that refused to quit. She set her mug down and walked down the porch steps, boots sinking softly into the damp earth. The chickens were already awake, strutting and gossiping in the yard. She smiled. "All right, ladies," she said. "Let's earn our breakfast." The morning unfolded in a rhythm that felt sacred. Feed the animals. Check the fence. Water the garden. Small acts, repeated daily, like prayer through movement. As she worked, she noticed a figure on the road. Small, distant, walking slowly. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, carrying a backpack too big for her shoulders. Maya froze for a moment, watching her approach. There was something painfully familiar about that walk. The hunched posture, the hesitant steps, the way she stared at the ground as though afraid the sky might look back. When the girl reached the gate, she stopped. Her eyes were red, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Hi," she said, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to trespass. I saw the sign." Maya nodded, smiling gently. "You're not trespassing." The girl swallowed. "Do you have water?" "My car broke down a mile back." "Of course. Maya said. Come sit on the porch. You look like someone who forgot where they were going. The girl blinked, startled, the same way Maya once had. For a long second, she didn't speak. Then her lip trembled, and the tears came fast, sudden, uncontrollable. Maya stepped forward and caught her as she crumpled, guiding her to the porch, letting her cry. It wasn't pity, it was memory. When the girl finally quieted, Maya handed her a glass of water. You're safe here, she said. The girl nodded weakly. Thank you. They sat in silence for a while, the windmill turning lazily above them. After a few minutes, the girl whispered, I was going to do something stupid. Maya didn't ask what. She didn't need to. She just said, you made it here. That's enough for today. The girl looked at her with wide, wet eyes. Why are you being so kind? Maya smiled softly, her voice gentle as the morning breeze. Because someone was kind to me once, when I didn't deserve it. The girl's shoulders shook again, but this time it wasn't grief. It was the release that comes when someone finally believes you still have a chance. Maya looked out over the fields, green, endless, alive, and thought of Tom. Maya looked out over the fields, green, endless, alive, and thought of Tom. If the ground can grow again after winter, she murmured, more to herself than anyone, so can you. The girl followed her gaze, her breathing slowing. The words seemed to sink into the air, into the soil itself. And for a moment, everything was still. Later, after breakfast, Maya showed her around the farm, the barn, the garden, the coop. The girl listened quietly, eyes wide, like she was seeing color for the first time in years. When they reached the porch again, Maya pointed to the sign by the road. You can stay a night, or a week, she said. No rules, just work and rest. The ground here doesn't quit. It waits. The girl smiled, tears shimmering again, but this time, they looked like the kind that water something. As the sun climbed higher, Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest, the same warmth she'd felt that first morning she woke on this porch, when the world had still been uncertain but alive. The second chance had become something bigger than her. It had become a place where broken things learned to grow again. And as she watched the girl walk toward the barn, sunlight catching her hair, Maya whispered to the wind, the same way she had whispered to the soil the day she buried Tom. Thank you for stopping. The breeze stirred in reply, carrying the faintest echo of his voice. Didn't stop, just turned around. Maya laughed softly, blinking at the horizon, the same horizon that once felt like an ending and now looked like forever. The sky blazed open, full of promise. The windmill turned. The farm breathed. And somewhere down that long dirt road, another soul might already be walking toward a new beginning. The end. Loved the story? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and become part of the Adair Stories family. Your support helps us bring more powerful African tales to life. Thanks for watching. We can't wait to share the next one with you. See you soon.